Have you ever had Wallaby licorice? The soft
No,
licorice. Are you a licorice
no,
guy?
not
Not
really.
really.
But
It's so good. They sell it at grocery stores, and it's
what
been around for a while. But I just
kind do you have? Just like the standard cherry Twizzler flavor?
it's strawberry in this case, and
Okay.
they're kind of
Oh, sure. I
thicker.
guess
They're
the standard
more.
Twizzler is,
Is it
but I
strawberry?
always
Yeah,
preferred. Yeah, I always preferred the
yeah.
cherry Twizzler. But
I
yes, the
think
standard Twizzler
Twizzlers
flavor
they feel
is.
like cherry more to me. Like if I bought
Well,
Twizzlers.
there is a specific cherry Twizzler. So
Oh,
the
but like
original,
this default is probably a strawberry.
the default is strawberry. Like if you just buy a Twizzler and it doesn't
Yeah,
say what flavor it is.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Either way, this
Either way,
Wallaby stuff is like a thicker, softer licorice, and it
it's
is.
like a better Twizzler. Twizzlers are kind of gross. And if we're being honest,
I'm a,
they're pretty nasty.
I'm a huge fan of Twizzlers, but that's okay.
I mean,
To each their own.
it's fine. I'm giving an objective fact, and you're
I
giving
know,
an opinion,
I know.
which is that you like them, despite
Do
the
you
fact
like
that
pull and
they're.
peels? I mean, are you talking about pull and peels, or are you talking about just the standard
I mean,
skinnier
I
ones?
do like pull and peels better. Yeah, I
Gotcha.
do like
I
pull and peels
actually like
better.
pull and peels worse.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Huh,
people are weird.
interesting. Yeah, that's an odd. But
Uh
if I'm gonna like pull and peel something, it's
huh.
gonna be fruit. It's gonna be fruit by the
Fruit.
foot.
Yeah,
That's
sure,
what I'm all
sure.
about. I
Yeah,
mean,
we'll
and
love
fruit by the
both.
foot is delicious.
Yeah, it
So
is.
it's a little bit different from a nasty old Twizzler. I haven't had Twizzler in probably like
Since you were a
10
kid.
years,
Yeah.
15
Oh,
years.
yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I ate a lot of candy in college, right? So I'm
Yeah.
sure
Aficionado. Yeah.
sure there were some Twizzlers slipped in there every once in a
Who could
while.
know?
Who could say? Welcome in to It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on X/Twitter/ whatever we're calling it these days, at Real Bird Lawyer. I recently got a Blue Sky invite. I'm actually on
Ooh.
Blue Sky now. I'm actually bird law expert on that. It's not taken. The bird law expert on Twitter has not tweeted in like 10 years,
Yeah.
much to my chagrin. Never been able to secure that app, but I did get one on Blue Sky, and I will send an invite your way whenever I get one. I think I get an invite every couple of weeks. I don't know what you do on Blue Sky. You sky, you blue. Yeah, what I don't know.
You blued yourself.
I did not blue myself. I've not blued at all on Blue Sky, but I am there as bird law expert. If you want to follow me there, I'm here as always with my co-host Taylor at Taylor_Wit on X/Twitter, and also on Threads. Which that was funny when Threads was a thing for a little bit. How's it going, buddy?
Fine. Do you remember back when Gmail was first coming around and you
Uh-huh.
needed invites for that?
Sure.
Were you in on the ground floor of like Gmail inviting and stuff by the time?
I don't remember whether I was or I wasn't. I mean, that was what, like 20 years
Long.
ago. So,
Sure, at least
I mean, how
probably,
could I
but
possibly remember that far back?
sure, but it is kind of what it reminds me of like, oh, you have an invite for that, like that kind of just
Sure.
the blue
Yeah,
sky stuff.
they want it to be exclusive. On the other hand,
They want everyone to have it also.
Unless all my friends are here, like what's, like I just want to be where all my people are. I mean, just the whole idea of switching over to a new social media platform and like finding all the same people just seems so incredibly tedious. I know a lot of people put their Blue Skies in their Twitter ads and everything like that, but like I follow like 3,000 people or 1,500 people, whatever it is, like that. Just I don't know.
It's a lot to re-network, and plus
it's a lot.
All the people from Truth Social that's about to shut down, and they're all going to come back to
great.
Twitter anyway.
I didn't know that. I didn't.
Yeah,
it's
another failed business venture.
Sure,
but
sure.
Yeah, so they're all about to come back to Twitter, and then we're all going to have to reintegrate with those people. So
well, their fearless leader did X once. He did post once on X,
and he probably now that's shutting down will X again.
Can't wait for that. Fantastic. Check out our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use our promo code Sunny, SUNNY. We've got our listener fantasy leagues drafting this weekend. We've already had one draft on Friday, which was awesome. That was our redraft league. We are not in that league, but we did, we watched the draft proceedings. That was a lot of fun. Those guys are going to have a blast. Can't wait to see who makes it out of that league and into our dynasty league, which is going to be drafting tomorrow. We're recording this on a Sunday, and then we've got our cutthroat league on Tuesday. All kinds of zany, wacky fun. But if you missed out on our leagues, check out Underdog. You can draft on Underdog. It's a daily fantasy redraft formula, so you can just draft your team. It's best ball. You never have to set your lineups. And here we are. It's week 1.
What an off season.
What an off season. We're going to talk about it a little bit later in the show, but we're going to have news. Then we're going to have a game preview, and then we're going to close this out with a conversation with friend of the show. He's back again. You guys love him. You know him, Rany Jazayerli from The Ringer. We always love having Rany on. It's such a blast to talk to him. Had a great conversation with him. But first, news. Well, we have to start with Chris Jones,
Sure.
Unfortunately. And we did record Rany's segment on Saturday before the latest round of Chris Jones news dropped. So if you hear anything of that segment that sort of asks hypothetically what is going to happen with Chris Jones, the answer is he's not here. It's Sunday afternoon. Chris Jones is not reported. Ian Rappaport says that he is not expected to report this week. Nate Taylor had said that today was really the last day that he could show up to the team facility and potentially get into the lineup on Thursday against the Lions. That did not happen. It doesn't sound like it's going to happen. And it sounds like there's absolutely no chance that he's here for week 1, which sucks.
Really sucks. Really, really just has put a damper on an otherwise sparkling offseason.
Yeah,
sparkling
off-season
vibes for the team and for the players involved. And I mean, really outside of Chris Jones, everything's gone as well as you can hope for this team. And it's just been, you can tell Andy's sick of answering the questions at his pressers, as everyone is really sick of even asking about it. It's not like anyone's enjoying this saga, but yeah, just a bummer situation all around.
We did get quite a bit of new information yesterday and today about the Chris Jones situation, as both sides were sort of desperate to finally leak out, where the contract negotiations stand. We went the entire summer without really any substantive information at all. And then obviously when it got into camp and Chris wasn't there were a few leaks here and there about what, maybe he's looking for on Saturday. And then the Sunday, we got a statement, or a leak, I should say, from Mike Florio, who notoriously hates the Chiefs and did, it seems, spin the numbers a little bit. The gist of it is, when it all comes down to it, the Chiefs essentially offered to pay him 2 additional years on top of the year that he's already under contract, which is this year, even though he's not here. 2 years at $27.5 million APY. That is higher than any other defensive tackle in the NFL, except for Aaron Donald, who's getting paid $30 million APY. More guarantees than Quentin Williams, more guarantees than Aaron Donald. And Chris and the Katz brothers apparently wanted $32.5 million APY, which is $2.5 million more a year than Aaron Donald. And on top of that, wanted to rip up his current deal and essentially get a new 3-year contract starting tomorrow, whenever he would sign that deal. So he essentially wanted $65 million in new money instead of the $55 that the Chiefs are offering. Now, listen, I think now that the numbers are out, it's been hard for us to take sides in this situation because we didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. You don't want to be caping for ownership and, trying to stop a guy from getting paid. Like we want a guy to get paid what he's worth, right? But now that the contract numbers are out, I just don't really see how anybody can be, I don't want to say on Chris Jones's side. For me, it's really hard to understand why he's not here right now, even if this is not what he wants in terms of an extension.
I agree. I think it's been really hard to understand how it got to this point, how both sides were so far apart for so long without making any progress towards a deal. It's been weird. And, both sides kind of talked through one side of their mouth and said that everything was great and peachy and Chris wanted to be a Chief for life and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, they didn't get it done. Neither side got it done. And that's disappointing. That's disappointing for a franchise that has a lot on the line this year, as they do, and they will every year with Patrick Mahomes, that they're going out to try and win championships every single year. And so to fumble this deal on both sides of it is frustrating. And you're right that now that we kind of see like, all right, if I were to look at these two deals and say which one is more appropriate to give to Chris Jones based on his age, his production, the market, the other, players at his position and all that, it's the Chiefs offer. The Chiefs offer makes a lot more financial sense for both sides than Chris's does. And, given that, if you were to blind, just say like, hey, which of the, what makes more sense here, then I have to be on the Chiefs side, I guess, which sucks. And it sucks that I'm frustrated with a guy that I have been absolutely enamored with since the day he walked into Arrowhead. Like he's a top 3 fan favorite in franchise history of all time.
Totally.
He is just a mega super fan favorite. And the fact that it's someone like him that has gotten to this point just as a kick in the balls just really sucks.
It's hard to know, and we probably will never know unless Chris fires his agents, I guess, how much of this is Chris and how much of this is the Katz brothers, his agents. And, at this point, I feel like pretty much everyone except for Chris and his agents is in agreement that what they're doing does not make sense financially. No. They obviously are not. I mean, him sitting out week 1 is not going to cause the Chiefs to give him $32.5 million when they're offering $27.5 and rip up his contract this year. It's not going to happen. And so every game he misses, not only does he lose close to $1 million, over $1 million per game, that's also going to lower his franchise tag value for next season, which the Chiefs have the ability to franchise tag him. And essentially, if he were to miss the 8 games that we're talking about that he, said he could miss and still accrue a season, I mean, we'd be looking at a franchise tag around 23 million instead of 32 million. So, again, like that's a greatly diminished franchise tag value. He'd essentially have to play on the tag because he can't sit out, right? I guess they could trade him. But at this point, he's not going to get $32.5 million. It's not going to happen. The market's not there. He's not going to get it from another team. We're 4 days out from the start of the season. Nobody's going to be swooping in. The Chiefs have no incentive to trade him. At this point, whatever gambit the Katz brothers were trying to pull off failed, and they need to recognize that and cut their losses. It's just hard to say whether, number one, whether they have the wherewithal to do that, and number two, whether Chris really is in a position to go to them and say, you guys screwed up. I want to be out there on the field, or whether, there's some real animosity between him and the team now.
That's really hard to gauge too, isn't it? It's just such a weird vibe that he's been giving off. And, basically the Katz brothers played chicken with a freight train in the Chiefs, and they didn't move, and the train blew them over. They ran through them. And now they're left trying to pick up these pieces and say like, oh, he can still, like, what is their best case scenario for this entire situation? Is that, I guess, if I were to think like idiots for a second, that the Chiefs are going to be horrible on defense and maybe lose a game where somebody runs all over them or does something where you can imagine that Chris Jones would have made a difference. And then the Chiefs are going to come crawling back to them and say, you're right, we're going to pay you more than Aaron Donald. Like, no, like the relationship is not at the point where that's going to happen. The Chiefs are going to say, fuck it. We have already gone this far with it. And now that you've cost us some games, we're going to take it out of your pocket. And we're going to, if you want to report in week 8, that's fine. And if you want to help us try and go win a Super Bowl in the playoffs, that's fine. But we're definitely going to franchise tag you 100% guaranteed. No way about it. If you miss half a season, we would be financially negligent to not franchise tag you. That would be a dumb business decision not to do it. And then at that point, so you're going to sit on the tag like your friend Le'Veon Bell did, and you're going to lose more money, more game checks that following year.
And he'll be 30 at that point.
And he'll be 30 and he'll be a malcontent. Teams will be, talking about like, do we really want to, as soon as this guy thinks he's not getting paid enough, we're going to bring him in and then he's going to sit out and demand more money. It just doesn't, like you said, it doesn't work financially at this point. Now, you and I definitely saw the angle of sitting out in preseason and in training camp.
Sure. Although I will say really quickly, as an aside, they should have had him show up and collect the checks but not actually work. Like the hold in is a much better financial decision than the hold out.
Than $50,000 a day.
Especially for a veteran player who can't get the fines, waived. Like Nick Bosa's been holding out, but since he's on a rookie contract, they can just waive those fines if they end up coming to a deal later.
And they will.
But for Chris, they can't do that. That has to come out of his future paycheck, and
$2 million total accrued in those fines.
Sure. And all you got to do is show up, but I'm sure the team would have preferred this too. You know, like we're going to give you you've got a fake injury or whatever, and you're going to be here collecting an excused absence. But you're not. Yeah, exactly. It just like the whole strategy is. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. It's just the whole point there, is that he certainly next year, if he gets to the point where he holds out 8 games, whatever, 7 games, whatever it is, a significant about half his paychecks this year, not only is that $8 million in game checks, not only is that $2 million in fines, not only is that, now you're going into next offseason, the Chiefs are going to slap a 22 whatever $1 million franchise tag on you. And then your choices there are, if you want to hold out, then they're going to trade you, and the other team is going to give the Chiefs a boatload of shit because it's for $22 million for Chris Jones. So the Chiefs are going to get more back in a trade if they do this. And, or he has to play and he's lost a lot of money, and he has to play on a $22 million salary next year. Nothing about the hold in or about the holdout once the season starts makes sense. It doesn't. And I think the Chiefs are just ready to call his bluff. And it's too bad, but he's put himself in this position also by, you can't really say I'm going to be a Chief for life and then be like, hey guys, I'm going to hold out. And they're like,
I'm going to be a Chief for life as long as you pay me $32.5 million a year.
Yeah. It's just shitty.
He tweeted today, I'm more motivated than ever. And obviously he's getting dragged in the replies. Just variations of, are you motivated to show up and play in week 1?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's a tough situation. And obviously, I mean, it's hard even to predict what his game plan is going forward, because the game plan right now doesn't make sense. And for him to hold out in week 2 also wouldn't make sense. And for him to hold out until week 8 makes the least amount of sense. But none of this makes any sense at all. So it's at this point, I think the Chiefs they have to be bracing to just not have him until week 8, after week 8, week 9. And, they'll have him back for the playoff push, and then they'll franchise tag him next year. And we'll go through this whole process again. I hope not, but I just don't see this playing out a whole lot of other ways, unless, again, he fires his agent and says, I want the original deal. I tweeted this today too, but I think if you're the Katz brothers, this has been going around a lot, their portfolio of NFL clients, it's basically Chris Jones and a bunch of scrubs, right?
Byron Pringle.
Byron Pringle, Demarcus Robinson. And I don't want to call those guys scrubs, because obviously if you play in the NFL, you're a very talented human being. But in the panoply of NFL players, those guys are not the brightest stars. Chris Jones is far and away their star contract, their golden goose. And, if I were them, I would be begging Brett Veach to be like, hey, will you give us $28 million a year, right? Or 28 and a half, so that, it'll cancel out the fine money, right? Just so that they can claim a win, because it can't be good for their future business if this continues down the path that it's going down. And it might already be too late to fix, because I'm not sure if they went to the Chiefs and begged for 28 million APY, the Chiefs wouldn't just say no. Sorry.
The Chiefs hold all the cards here. They do. They could approach this, and they probably are and should approach this like he just had a preseason injury, because this happens to every team every year, where you've got guys that you plan on having throughout the season that you lose to injury, and you soldier on, you next man up. But in those cases, you have to pay those players, even though they're out. This is actually a better situation financially, just financially, for the Chiefs if Chris Jones had torn something in the preseason and missed the whole year or missed half a year or something like that. They also are going to get cap money. here when he misses games. They're
sure.
getting $1 million new 2022
and,
cap.
They could always use that. They have to keep the cap money to pay him if he reports. But like if he doesn't show up until week 8, they freed up cap space to make a move at the trade deadline.
$8 million in cap. Absolutely. I mean, they could make enough moves to where they don't even need him to come back. That they might think like, hey, we're going to bring in Carlos Dunlap and we're going to do some other stuff. And like that 19 million that you have on the books this year, like we actually could use all of that. And I know, like you were saying, that this must have been before we started recording today, but like the Chiefs are not obligated to employ Chris Jones.
Right.
Like if he wants to come back and they are like, nah, bro, we're good. Like, I don't know. I don't think we've had a situation in the NFL as high profile as this, that's ever really happened. But I do think that there's real risk there for Chris Jones of realizing that he's not necessary for the Chiefs to be a really damn good football team. And, I don't want to say hopefully they find out, because I don't like to say that, disparagingly towards Chris, but like either way, I hope the Chiefs win as many games as they play, obviously. So if that involves no Chris Jones, so be it.
Let's talk about something, fortunately, that's actually much more positive, happier news, and that's the injury situation. Normally during the season, we would lead off the injury report, but, obviously Chris Jones takes precedent over the injury situation. Everybody's practicing. Everybody's going to play. Everybody on the 53-man roster, which obviously does not include Chris Jones because he hasn't reported, and he's on the did not report list. But that most notably includes L'Jarius Sneed. It includes Kadarius Toney. Obviously, both of those guys missed essentially the entire preseason. We're not playing. There was some question, especially with Kadarius Toney and his injury history, whether they would be ready to go on Thursday. Andy Reid says they are both good. They are both expected to play, and that's pretty big. I mean, especially L'Jarius Sneed, who, after Chris Jones, might be their best defensive player.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's an argument there for sure. Huge news. These are guys that, their individual absence, I mean, I guess Sneed more so than Toney. The individual absence is a big enough deal as it is. Like if the Chiefs were just going into this game, and even if they had Chris Jones figured out, but if they didn't have L'Jarius Sneed, we'd still be like, damn, that's like, like you said,
it's a big loss.
Arguably their second best defensive player. But both of those guys coming back, I know they didn't get the preseason and camp reps that we would have liked to get them to make sure they're sharp, but like they're pros. They'll get it figured out. And Toney on offense is also just, again, this kind of like this mysterious, mystical.
He's like a force multiplier. I mean,
force multiplier. That's a good way of putting it.
Just him being out there. I mean, it pushes everybody else down the depth chart, and it gives you a piece that, Rashee Rice, Sky Moore, Justin Ross, all those guys, even Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they have their uses. They have their special abilities, but none of them have the special abilities that Kadarius Toney has.
Yep, that he showed in the Super Bowl. When he's been, on his game, he's a fun piece. And yeah, so I think both of those give you that kind of that motivation that, like, yes, even though the Chiefs are missing Chris Jones, it's not like they're limping into week 1. They're the damn defending champs, and they've got the offense is loaded, ready to roll. There's no missing pieces on the offense at all. The offensive line looks great. You got Patrick Mahomes. I mean,
sure.
I think the vibes should be really, really high. The banners dropping, all that fun stuff. And yeah, we're going to miss Chris out there. Yeah, he's a force. And the Lions will probably have a cleaner pocket than they would have otherwise. And they probably will score more points than they would have otherwise. But you got to figure that, the offense is up to the task. And there's still some damn good players on that defense. Like, this is not a one-man show. We've talked about how he's the main piece, and that's absolutely true. But there are plenty of guys up and down that defensive roster that can make a big play happen. And we'll just hope that they do it on Thursday.
And listen, it's not like the Chiefs haven't been building towards this, right? Like, even if they knew in April, and obviously it's been their intention to sign Chris Jones to another deal.
Sure.
But Chris Jones, even if they signed him, they know Chris Jones is about to turn 30. They know that he's getting up there in age. They know that they need more talent on the defensive side of the ball. They've spent back-to-back first-round picks on pass rushers. Yeah. They spent a first-round pick last year on Trent McDuffie. They've spent 3 first-round picks on the defense the last 2 drafts, and they've knocked it out of the park in the later rounds, getting contributors And so I don't know what it's going to look like, but the defense has a lot of talented players on paper. I mean, guys like Karlaftis and FAU, whether they're ready to contribute, certainly not at the level that Chris Jones could, but like those are guys that we should expect to be better. Karlaftis, obviously FAU's a rookie, but it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. So let's talk about it. We've got a game to preview, the first game of the year. Lions at Chiefs. We're going to this game on Thursday, which is going to be awesome. We got seats right down in the lower bowl near the 50-yard line. It's going to be amazing. If any of you guys are going to the game, feel free to DM us. We may see you at a tailgate or something in the parking lot before the game, or feel free to stop by. We met some of you before the AFC Championship game last year, and that was a blast. Yep. Always happy to take pictures and hang out with our fans and just get a chance to talk ball with you guys. But I mean, how do we feel about this? Just about playing the Lions, the Detroit Lions coming to Arrowhead on Banner Night. It's kind of wild.
It is wild. There's a lot of mixed kind of, I have some excitement about certain things and just kind of some annoyance about other things. I'll start with the excitement because that's fun. Certainly going to a Banner Night is something that you can't do that often in your fandom history. And, we were fortunate enough to go to Royals opening day 2016 against the Mets, which was a blast and a complete different type of celebration than what those previous games. So the nerve levels of a playoff game at home versus opening up with revealing the banner that you just won the previous year are night and day. They're as far apart from each other as they can be. The week one, everything is still in front of you in the whole season. It's more of a celebration of what you've already accomplished, that type of stuff. So like, I tend to work myself up a little bit for big games. And even though I love to go to them and all that stuff, I get kind of freaked out, kind of nervous, as most people would. But this is like, I feel no nerves. I feel no anticipation or trepidation about what could happen out there. I'm just ready to go out and party and celebrate with all 79,000 of my closest friends about what just happened the previous year. So like that vibe check wise, loving that, really excited to do that with you. That's going to be a lot of fun. But the Lions are annoying. Like the fact that they made us do this against the Lions. We talked about this on schedule reveal. We did. But like, we don't care about revealing our banner to a team that's never been to the Super Bowl before. That's dumb.
Feels cruel.
Yeah, it does. So that's kind of where I'm feeling about the fact that the opponent is the Lions. I like the Lions. I want to restore the roar. I feel like they're, a likable, fun, plucky, never won anything type of NFC team that, basically, if they're not my second favorite NFL team, I don't know who would be, but they certainly would be in the conversation right there. So like, yeah, it's annoying that Raj put the Chiefs up against the Lions week one.
Yeah, and it's annoying too, because even though, spoiler alert, we both expect the Chiefs to win this game, like the Lions are a good team. They almost made the playoffs last year. They were in it down to the afternoon on the last season of the game, or last game of the season, and things didn't quite break their way, but they unburied themselves from a 2-6 start. They came back. They finished with a winning record for the first time in forever for that franchise. They look good. And not only that, they play tough and they play like they have nothing to lose. And honestly, here on opening night at Arrowhead, they don't have anything to lose. They are the Detroit Lions coming in on Banner Night against the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. So it just is tough because, if the Chiefs win, great. Everybody's going to expect them to win. And you don't really get any credit for beating a team that's on the up and up, but hasn't made it to the top of the mountain yet. No. But if you lose, people are going to be giving you shit. I mean, imagine Bengals fans on Twitter if we drop game one of the Lions. Now,
what's the comp that we've used for this game? Very recent version of this game. 6 years ago. Chiefs at Patriots.
Yes.
Banner night for the defending multi-Super Bowl #1 team in the NFL by a mile. Everyone wants to be them, MVP quarterback, all that
against
stuff.
Against a team that had one playoff win in 25 years and hadn't been to Super Bowl in 50 years.
Right. Like the Chiefs were, for all intents and purposes, the Lions. Like, I mean, obviously they had a little bit more success than them historically, but not much. not
Yeah,
much.
slightly more, but yeah.
And it was the same exact type of vibes where the Chiefs went into that game thinking, fuck it. Like, yeah, everyone expects the Patriots to go, celebrate their rings and go stomp on us and all that stuff. But we've got different ideas. We've got a dynamic offense. We've got some playmakers. We've got this new running back.
I got a rookie running back. Yeah,
exactly. Right. There were a lot of parallels here. And, I guess it's just that worries me. And that shouldn't worry me because that's not really how the NFL works. It's not like because something happened 6 years ago under similar circumstances, that means anything close to that is going to happen this time. It's just, if you're thinking about like, there's no scenario where the Lions could come into Arrowhead and win, like, you're dead wrong. That literally happened 6 years ago. The Chiefs were just on the other side of it. So that's got to think about that.
Let's break this game down. And what we'll typically do, for those of you who may be new to this program, we typically will look on each side of the ball. So starting when the Chiefs have the ball, we almost always start with the offense because, let's face it, we get to see Patrick Mahomes on Thursday night. It's going to be amazing. Our favorite comprehensive stat, DVOA, is not currently available because Aaron Schatz, its creator, sold Football Outsiders, the website, and then Football Outsiders didn't pay their bills, so the site is down, and Aaron doesn't have his proprietary stats hosted anywhere else on the internet right now, which is just a bizarre, annoying situation. But I can tell you from memory where the Chiefs ranked last year in offensive DVOA, because it was first out of 32 teams. They were the best. They were the best offense in the NFL last year. And I can't tell you exactly where the Lions finished because I don't have that information handy, but I can tell you ballpark where they finished. They were bottom 5 in defensive DVOA last year. Yeah. So best offense against bad defense means the Chiefs are going to score a lot of points in this game.
Yeah, we've seen this formula before, haven't we?
Yes.
We've seen it, in fact, in several generations of Chiefs fandom. And this looks like it might be the makings of another one of those. The other side can throw the ball around and neither side can really stop it. That's a recipe for a high over-under. Now, the over-under on this game is like 51.5, I think I saw, and that's the highest in the NFL by 3 points. Oh, no, 54. So the second highest was 51. Hammer that over. I think 54, you're looking at, we don't normally do a ton of gambling advice on this show, but I think both teams are going to be in the 30s.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
So I definitely think that this is a recipe for a lot of points, a lot of fireworks. We're going to be celebrating a lot and then groaning a lot, I think, back and forth when we're in the stands on Thursday. But when the Chiefs have the ball, I know they've got a new, no more Juju and McCole Hardman. Now you add Rashee Rice and Justin Ross and that type of stuff. But I think in general, we all know what we expect when the Chiefs have the ball. We expect the MVP to be the MVP. We expect Travis Kelce to be the GOAT, and we expect Andy Reid to be the GOAT. And that's literally exactly
what we're going to do. One offense.
Three goats. Pretty good. It works pretty well. It's been working well so far.
It's going to be interesting to see, obviously, the offensive line. You already kind of shouted it out once. I mean, I think that was one of our biggest takeaways from the preseason was how well the first-string offensive line played. We already knew that the interior offensive line was going to be the best in the NFL, but Donovan Smith looks healthy and he looks fast and he looks like so far an upgrade over Orlando Brown Jr. And Jawan Taylor at right tackle, one of the best pass blocking right tackles in the league last year. The Chiefs have been, I think, skewed a little bit more towards run blocking success. I don't think by design. I just think that's kind of what they've been a little bit better at the last few years. Patrick Mahomes hasn't really had elite pass blocking tackles since he won his first Super Bowl when he had Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz out there, at the tackle spots. And, when he had that offensive line, the tackles were great, but the interior of that offensive line was terrible. And this, I think, does have the potential to be the highest ceiling offensive line that he's played behind. And then, it just comes down to what are the receivers going to do? And I think we're both excited to kind of see how that goes. On the Lions side, they were bottom 5 in defensive DVOA last year. What did they do to get better? They have the same defensive coaching staff. They took a linebacker in the first round of the draft at 18th overall, which, that was kind of a big shocker. They also took a running back at 12th overall. We'll talk about him when we talk about the Lions with the ball. But they traded their former number 3 overall pick, Jeff Okudah, cornerback, replaced him. And kind of a weird situation because he had been a bust, but he actually played decently well for them last year, and they just decided, yeah, we've seen enough. We're going to ship him out. Falcons swooped in and bought him on a discount. So I don't know. There's not a lot of obvious reason why they should be a lot better. I think, they certainly, we don't have their weighted DVOA numbers since the website is down, but they were playing better towards the end of the year. But it's not like this is a defense that you would expect to suddenly be top 10. I mean, could this be an average defense at the end of the year? Maybe, but it's not elite based on the talent and their performance last year. It's not an elite defense, and an average defense is not going to stop the Chiefs from dropping 40.
An elite defense isn't going to stop the Chiefs from dropping 40 a lot of times. I mean, it doesn't really.
Yeah, remember the 49ers game last year?
Sure, and the Eagles
defense in the NFL.
I mean, you can definitely throw the number one defense. The Patriots, when they were the number one defense, very often would give up high 30s, 40 to the Chiefs. So it's you're right. They added CJ Gardner-Johnson in free agency, Eagle that knows full well about getting burned by some corn dogs, but it's not a recipe where this team is not going to rely on their defense. They're going to be a lot like some of the teams that we've watched that have struggled for the Chiefs, struggled on defense, where they hope that a ball gets tipped and they can come up with a turnover or something like that. And they just hope that they don't give up touchdowns on every single drive. That's kind of it's not even bend, but don't break, because they're going to break a lot. It's don't break every single time you're out there. Like just every now and then, please bend. Like that's kind of what they're hoping for. And I think that's what we're going to see a lot of. We're going to see the Chiefs be able to execute against this defense. We're going to see them be able to move the ball up and down the field at will. If the Chiefs defense does struggle, which we'll get to, it's really just going to be more of who has the ball last, that type of shootout looking game. I mean, this does look like a shootout. As much as I am not thrilled about, the Lions defensive prospects or anything, like I still think they're going to be able to hang with the Chiefs. So we might as well switch to that gear.
Sure. Let's talk about the other side of the ball. So when the Lions have the ball, they did finish as a top 5 offense last year. I think they were 5th, if memory serves. So they snuck in there a little bit, but this was a sneaky good team. Jared Goff playing good ball. He obviously knows a thing or two about playing shootouts against the Chiefs. He was the quarterback, the winning quarterback, unfortunately, in the highest scoring game in NFL history, 54-51 in Mexico City. Or I guess it wasn't the highest scoring
scoring by a losing team.
The only game in NFL history where both teams scored 50 points.
50. Yep.
He was the winning quarterback in that game, and obviously he probably had his best season last year since that year when he famously beat the Chiefs in that shootout and went to the Super Bowl. And then Bill Belichick sort of undid him for a couple of seasons. The Rams decided the Rams decided they didn't want him around anymore and traded for Matt Stafford. And he's had pretty good performances in Detroit. But the Chiefs had a good defense last year. They finished 17th in defensive DVOA. That was their second best finish under Steve Spagnuolo. They finished 14th in the 2019 season, where they obviously got their first Super Bowl ring, but 14th in weighted DVOA, in weighted defensive DVOA. So they were playing like a top half defense by the end of the year. They were 20th against the pass and 15th against the run.
That's all Mahomes needs, man. Top 17 defense.
But no Chris Jones. No Chris Jones. Jared Goff is a top 10 quarterback when he's kept clean. He is a bottom 10 quarterback when he's pressured. I don't see the Chiefs getting a lot of pressure in this game. I think that the Lions have a great offensive line. That's really kind of the centerpiece of their offense. The Chiefs, obviously, without Chris Jones, I'm not expecting them to generate a lot of pressure. So it's going to be on Steve Spagnuolo to, I think, get more out of obviously the linebackers and the DBs blitzing to generate pressure, bringing extra guys to generate pressure, and then just giving Jared Goff different looks. And Steve Spagnuolo excels at that, but it's not necessarily something that he loves to do the first week of the season, right? Like the Chiefs do like to get tricky with their coverages, but they like to do it like late in the year when games actually kind of matter and, against teams that they need to beat. We've seen them come up with bespoke game plans early in the year to beat, the Ravens a few years ago, to beat the Bills a few years ago when, we're concerned about seeding at the end of the year. But the Lions aren't that. They're an NFC team. I don't know what the game plan is going to be for this game without Chris Jones.
What's funny is and this is a little anecdotal, but it tends to be with a Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo team that they start off early a little wacky on offense, and then they end a little wacky on defense. They kind of flip-flop. They kind of throw the curveballs
and then
at you.
The playoffs come and they go wacky.
And then all bets are off in the playoffs, and they'll do whatever it takes to win and be like a cornered animal. But yes, in early season games, usually we're looking more for the wrinkles on the offensive side of the ball. The screen games, the jet stuff, the just different ways that the pieces are used. That's more of like a, what's Andy Reid going to come up with this offseason? And then Spagnuolo starts off and he kind of gets a feel for his defense. And famously, Spagnuolo defenses don't really gel until midway through the year. And then they're pretty successful from the second half.
Pretty tasty.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I see that pattern continuing. I see no reason why it wouldn't. So I do think that the Chiefs are going to kind of play a vanilla-ish game plan here. They're going to kind of on defense, and they're going to kind of go out there and say, I'm pretty sure if we line up our offense against your defense and your offense against our defense, that we probably are going to win more of those possessions just based on talent that we have on offense. And I mean, I hope they're right. I think they're right, probably, but I don't see the Chiefs defense having a lot of success in this game. I don't see them, as you said, getting a ton of pressure, especially without blitzing. They could, if they do want to get a little creative this game and start doing some weird blitzes and stuff. Yeah, I could see those getting home because that's Spag's thing. But I just don't really think he's into it this early. I don't think he's going to do it. And if that's the case, then I think we're going to see a lot of touchdowns.
It's going to be more of a big play turnover type defense, I think, than it's going to be a down to down consistent stops defense. We already kind of talked about the run defense. The Chiefs finished 20th against the run in defensive DVOA last year. The Lions, I mean, they telegraphed what they want to do this year by taking a running back 12th overall. Not even the first running back off the board. But they took Jahmyr Gibbs and they signed David Montgomery to a big deal from the Bears. And they've just loaded up with a bunch of dogs on their offensive line. And, they've got Dan Campbell, the kneecap biter, as their head coach. And, it's a team that wants to run the ball. And the Chiefs are, not that Chris Jones is great against the run, but he does make splash plays against the run. His presence will be missed. And I think that there's a possibility that, the Lions score 35 points in this game. The question is whether or not the Chiefs will be able to score more than that, and I think that they will. Let's go ahead and make our official predictions before we get to our conversation with Rany. I will give you the floor.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think the Lions are going to score a lot. And in fact, my gut feeling final score in this game was Lions 42, Chiefs 48. I think it's going to be one of the highest scoring games of the year. That's right on par for being the highest scoring NFL game of the year. And I think I said this to you before we started recording, that if you were going to create in a lab a highest scoring game of the year, it's probably Chiefs versus Lions. It's probably and Chiefs minus Chris Jones versus the Lions. Right. I mean, it's just there's just not a lot of give on either side. Offensively, they're both very, very good offensively. And then there's a ton of give on both sides on the defense right now. Now, I might be selling the Chiefs defense a little short here. They might come out juiced without Chris. They might come out inspired in front of the Arrowhead crowd. Like, if the Lions end up looking like a shell of their hot start or hot finish to the last year, that wouldn't shock me by any means. No. But I'm not going to predict it. So I think the Chiefs win a mega shootout 48-42.
I'm also picking the Chiefs to win in a mega shootout, but I'm going a little bit lower. The Lions, to start off last season, lost to the NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles 38-35. The Philadelphia Eagles then lost 38-35 to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
They did.
And now I'm picking the Chiefs to beat the Lions in week 1 of the 2023 season, 38-35. That's my prediction. Let's hope it holds. And let's talk to our good friend, Rany Jazayerli.
We now welcome into the show Rany Jazayerli, author on The Ringer, co-host of the Kaufman Corner podcast with 810 Seren Petro, and friend of the show. Rany, how the heck are you tonight?
I am well, guys. Looking forward to the season.
Yeah, it's right around the corner here before we know it.
Fast approaching.
It's one of those deals where it kind of was slowly approaching, and now next thing you know, it's a week away. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've been just so into Royals baseball. It just didn't occur to me that the football season's upon us. No, I've been sitting around waiting for this for 6 months now. give me any excuse to not pay attention to the huge crater on the other end of the Truman Sports Complex.
We were applauding before you got on the air your dedication to the fans of Coffin Corner producing episodes every week, because Taylor and I, as we've I'm sure discussed with you before, we put in our time for years and years and years, and now we don't have the same love to spare for it. But I admire the dedication. I admire the dedication.
I appreciate that. When Seren has been asking me for several years to do a podcast with him, and I resisted for a while. I just time and work and 4 kids and
the Royals.
And then finally 2 years, two off seasons ago, the off season before the 2022 season, I thought, you know what, the rebuild is now in its 5th year. Things are looking up.
Sure.
Maybe now I'll give in and let's start a podcast, and we'll be there on the upswing. And the first season was so bad the first season was so bad that Dayton Moore somehow finally got fired along with Mike Mazzini and Cal Udred. And the second season is the worst, not just the worst season in Royals history, quite possibly the worst season in Kansas City sports history. Yeah. I guess I'd put and let us pray that there are nothing approaching what happened with the 2012 Chiefs that put a coda on that season. Yeah, so seriously. I think that's still holds the record given the off field stuff, and let's hope that always is the case. But this certainly would rank number 2 on my list.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we were doing a listener league draft for fantasy football, and we mentioned during our call that we were going to have you on this weekend because this was just last night, and the listeners that were part of the league were thrilled. They said that you're always one of their favorite segments on the show, so we super appreciate you making some time on our long weekend to talk a little Chiefs football with us.
I'm very excited to actually talk about a team that is good and that I care about. So
that's right, that you're proud of. Yeah,
exactly. That I'm very proud of. It is a very, very strange dichotomy right now. I mean, it's we've seen this for decades. The idea that only one of these two teams can be good at any given time.
Yeah, right.
But basically that's because the Royals have been good for an incredibly narrow window in the last 30 years. Sure. So it's not a hard.
The Chiefs happened to be bad when the Royals were good, so
they did. They did, and it's funny if you split all the American sports up top to bottom, 1 through however many there are, you're probably looking at the Chiefs number 1 and the Royals dead last, or at least it's super
very close. Yeah, if you were to have franchise power rankings across the 4 sports,
right?
I mean, certainly if you've just football and baseball, yes, I think where the Chiefs are in a better position. Not just than any other NFL team, but really any other sports team, just because of the nature of the quarterback position, the importance it is, and the fact that the labor rules are such that if you have an elite quarterback, you can keep him essentially forever. It's very hard for that to break. I mean, you think about like a young LeBron James, that's probably had more impact on his team than perhaps even a Patrick Mahomes can, just because of the way the game is. There's 5 guys on the court.
Yeah, right. Yep.
But the Cavaliers couldn't keep him forever, and they didn't.
Right.
So the Royals have the Chiefs have the most valuable commodity in American sports, I guess, depending on how you feel about Leo Messi at the moment. But
sure, right. He's quickly approaching.
Yeah, but no, I still put Patrick 1, and that contract. The contract finally kicks in this year. Am I wrong? So it's which is laughable. So they're in an excellent position. The Royals, second worst record in the sport, one of the 3 worst farm systems in the sport. So I think you could definitely put them very close to the bottom. So
let's talk about why the Chiefs are towards the top, and I want to compare specifically. I want to start with an off-season comparison between the offseason after Super Bowl 54 and the offseason after Super Bowl 57. So after Super Bowl 54, it was, as we all remember, COVID was right smack in the middle of shutting down everything. There was no White House visit for the team. There was no going around showing our Super Bowl gear off to strangers because most of us were locked in our houses. There was no crowd on opening night for that year, obviously. Right. Things just on everyone's mind other than football. Very distracted, very weird offseason for everybody. Compared to this year, we had, full ass parade, the White House, the ring ceremony, NFL honors. Pat and Travis were doing the golf, the match, Saturday Night Live. Travis hosted it. Arrowhead's going to be juiced on Thursday, packed to the gills. Just kind of talk about, the difference between how you felt after Super Bowl 54, as fun as that was, and being the first Super Bowl in 50 years, and then compared to how you felt defending it so far in this offseason.
Well, the one thing I will say, at least that we had in 2020 was we did have the parade. Right? I do feel like that is such an enormous part of the sort of emotional,
like the catharsis, right?
Yeah,
like
the catharsis. That's the word I was looking for.
Sure.
Is that parade, and we did have that. And I don't know if we've talked about this before, but let's also give a shout out to Patrick Mahomes for saving lives, because in retrospect, we did not know this at the time, but in the second week of February 2020, COVID was circulating to a very high degree on the West Coast of the United States.
That's right.
Including one San Francisco.
This is great.
And I'm sure there were a few cases in the Midwest and Kansas City at that time, but epidemiological evidence suggests that had the 49ers held a parade outdoors, probably in a nice warm weather day in the Bay Area, people probably not wearing masks because of the cold, and everyone completely unaware of the biggest pandemic in a century about to hit the world. We would be looking back at that parade in all likelihood as a early super spreader event.
That's true.
But that didn't happen. And while there may have been some case spread in Kansas City at that time, it was probably much, much, much less. And you do the math, we're talking about, conservatively, dozens of lives. Hundreds of cases, maybe thousands. Who knows? We'll never know. But when I say that that Jet Chip Wasp saved lives, that is not an exaggeration whatsoever. Patrick Mahomes
is a hero.
Is a genuine American hero, global hero. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that. So let's put that on the resume.
This is why we love having you on, Rany, for perspectives like that from, a medical professional such as yourself.
A medical doctor.
That's right. Not at all exaggerating, right? Patrick Mahomes is a literal lifesaver. That's the kind of measured perspective you're getting from me.
Exactly right.
I'm sure that San Francisco fans really appreciate that too.
Yeah,
and they're definitely not still talking about it. I definitely did not see a Niners fan tweeting about that today. But
they should. I still remember in early 2015, the 2014-2015 baseball offseason, walking. I was probably on vacation, maybe in Florida with the family, with my Royals cap on.
Yeah.
And walking by some guy about my age wearing a Giants cap, and he just kind of looked at me, gave me that shit-eating grin.
Yes.
And just kind of tipped his cap. And I couldn't do anything but smile.
Yeah.
So there's, that first Super Bowl, there's so much about that first Super Bowl win that, that the second one, we will not be able to match, just because it was the first one of my lifetime. But getting that on San Francisco, and because I have passed by some people in various San Francisco gear over the years, wearing Royals or Chiefs gear now, and that feels good. But the fact that it was a Shanahan who was coaching, there's just so many fringe benefits of that first one. So I don't want to downplay the emotional catharsis of that first offseason, though. Even though, like you said, COVID did put a severe damper on the overall enjoyment. I mean, let's also throw in the fact that the draft was in Kansas City this year.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
The draft was the center of the NFL universe this offseason.
Impeccable timing. I mean, the one thing you can always say about Patrick Mahomes is his timing is incredible with all of this stuff. I mean, we're hosting the draft. Okay, this is the year we're going to win. The first time they won the draft was held in Roger Goodell's
basement,
living room or whatever.
It was.
But yeah, the timing this year, Patrick Mahomes, the year he was on the Madden cover, he's like, Madden, no, I'm going to go win a Super Bowl. The year I'm on the I'm on the cover of Madden. Everyone else is felled by that, not Patrick Mahomes.
No,
we're gonna have the draft Kansas City. We're gonna go in as the defending champions. So yeah, the Travis Kelce SNL appearance was phenomenal.
Yep,
it's great.
It was definitely a very enjoyable last 6 months. Only lessened by the Royals having insisting on playing baseball for
having existed. Yeah, that's
exactly.
fair. And when we're talking about off seasons, then I have to also not only the 2020 off season, but the 2022 off season, the last year's one, where the vibes were completely different. The Chiefs early on in the off season traded Tyreek Hill. They were coming off of that loss, that excruciating, horrifying loss to the Bengals. Everyone else in the AFC was completely all chips in the middle, trading for superstar after superstar and just loading up to beat the vulnerable Chiefs. The Chiefs actually, looked human during a stretch in that season. People started playing them too high. They kind of couldn't figure it out for a while. And then, of course, Mahomes had probably and maybe not even probably the worst half of his professional life. And it happened to be the one that was the most recent half of football we had all watched. Right. So that was that offseason. Comparing that one now to MVP, Super Bowl MVP, won the AFC West by 4 games. The Chiefs ran away with the loaded AFC West division. They beat Burrow. They beat the number 1 defense in the NFL in the Super Bowl. Mahomes now has 2 rings. The Chiefs caught the Broncos and the Raiders with their 3rd as a franchise. It's so funny how everything both on and off the field completely flipped between last season's offseason and this one. Do you feel like things are going too well for the Chiefs? Like
I was going to say, last year, I mean, the vibes were weird.
Yeah.
Right. They were just very weird because it was still Patrick Mahomes, the prime of his career. The team was great. They played great in that game and they just let it get away. There was no worry about the quality of talent in the organization, right? But there was definitely a very bizarre kind of end of the season. They lost a game they shouldn't have. Patrick Mahomes played in the way he shouldn't have. Then there was the whole, was there a fight on the sidelines at halftime?
Right.
Yep.
And, there was a lot of questions about that. And Eric Bieniemy, there was rumors. It was a really strange vibe. And at the same time, like you said, the AFC West, loaded up with $500 million worth of contracts.
Yep.
It created a strange situation though, where the Chiefs were and I keep wanting to say the Royals. I apologize, guys. I do a podcast every week where I have to say the word Royals. I would like to be able to banish them from my vocabulary, not just for tonight. But it created this weird vibe where the Chiefs were still the most talented team or among the most talented teams in the sport, and yet there was a chip on their shoulder. There was certainly a chip on the shoulder of us as Chiefs fans, seeing all of these, talking heads on TV, doubting, the direction of the franchise, doubting their ability to win in the 2022 season, predicting that they wouldn't make the playoffs. Predicting that the Raiders would win the division. Like there was, it got to the point where it was like, and then of course the Tyreek Hill trade, but in a way it was fun because we were simultaneously as fans, we knew we were rooting for a great team, and yet we could adopt an underdog pose.
Yes.
And the franchise absolutely did that from start to finish. To the point where at the parade, Brett Veach stole the line I had written for my Ringer article summing up the season, which is, not bad for a rebuilding year. Right?
Nice.
And
that's great line.
I mean, it was great. But it was like true. It's like they traded one of the 3 or let's say one of the 4 core guys on their roster, among Kelce Mahomes, Chris Jones, Tyreek Hill, one of the 4 most valuable players on their roster, traded him for draft picks and cap space.
Yep.
And got better. And won the Super Bowl, and set themselves up for success in the future. And you would like to think that the harvest of that trade is going to be bearing more fruit this year because all of those draft picks, especially those defensive guys, they're now in their 2nd year, and it's a reasonable assumption that George Karlaftis will be better this year. Brent McDuffie will be better. He'll be, if assuming he doesn't get hurt and, miss the first half of the season, he'll be more available.
Right.
But even Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams. I mean, there's a lot of reason to think that side of the team will be better. This will hopefully be the best defense that Patrick Mahomes has ever played with.
Sure.
Chris Jones right now, kind of the vibe's not great with that.
No.
And so it's like if Chris Jones between now and whenever this podcast goes up, if like he signs a contract, he reports to the team, I'm feeling as good about the talent on this roster as I have about any Chiefs team during the Mahomes era, which is to say any Chiefs team ever.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. But like I said, it's almost too good in some ways. But the flip side of that is they won the Super Bowl last year, which means they've won 2. And not that we're playing with house money, but in a way it's like my goals now are not just simply measured in Super Bowl championships. It's measured in like historic legacy of this franchise. We can talk about some of those things, but like it's like what can you do that's even more impressive than winning a Super Bowl? Well, winning back-to-back Super Bowls would be awesome. First time in 20 years. Winning 3 in a 5-year stretch, something only like 3 or 4 teams have ever done. So I feel like we're no longer comparing ourselves to the other teams in the sport.
Yep.
So even if they have a shocking playoff loss, okay, that team will have something on us for now, but it would take more than one season. There's almost nothing that could happen this season that would knock the Chiefs off the current pedestal of the quote unquote NFL team of the 2020s.
Yep.
Right? So I feel like we're building to like, we don't want to just be the NFL team of the 2020s. Can we be the NFL team of the century, NFL team of all time? I mean,
right.
That's not something you can build in 1 year, but that's sort of those are where my horizons. That's where I'm looking right now.
Rany, it's a great point. And actually it's funny you talked about house money, because that was literally the next question I was going to ask. It's when we talked before the Bengals game, it was like, this is it. There's so much on the line here. This is a major tipping point in the history of our franchise. And when the Chiefs won that game, even the Eagles game had seemingly less at stake. Since you're playing an NFC opponent, you've made it to the
really
Super
kind
Bowl.
of did. Yes.
Yeah, right. And now, I mean, the Chiefs won that too. So the franchise has 3 rings. Pat and Andy each have 2. I mean, like, is there, before we get into the aspirational part of this, I mean, like, what's the worst thing that can happen this year? Like, I mean, Joe Burrow gets his first ring. Okay, I guess that's probably the worst thing that could happen. I don't know. I mean, I literally, aside from a catastrophic injury, and we never want to.
Right,
worst thing on the field.
Yeah,
on the field.
But like, what's even the worst thing that could happen this year? Because now Patrick Mahomes is the guy.
Right. I mean, the worst thing that could happen would be losing to Joe Burrow in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And this time having the Bengals go on to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I think if that were to happen, there would then be, at least you can make a reasonable argument of whether the Bengals have surpassed the Chiefs as sort of the glamour franchise of the NFL. I mean, it's hard to imagine that right now, but if you put them there, they've got 2 Super Bowls, 1 Super Bowl win, and 2-1 against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs.
In the AFC Championship each time too, not just a regular playoff game.
Well,
like
that would be their 3rd straight AFC Championship game appearance.
That's a good point, right?
I mean, 6 in a row for us would be better
pretty
than
funny.
that. But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but 3 in a row for them would be quite the accomplishment.
Right. It would be an interesting conversation. I think we're still clearly number 1, but like then you go into next season with them, having the potential to wrest that title away of team of the decade.
Their fans would be.
Well, I mean, we could imagine, because I mean that's why you talk about the game we played last in the playoffs last year.
Sure.
Like, yeah, the Eagles game more important from a standpoint as Super Bowl win is more important than a Super Bowl appearance. But yeah, if we lost to the Eagles, there might be questions about the Chiefs. Oh, can Patrick Mahomes win the big one? There'd be all this bullshit, right? But it wouldn't be connected to a specific team, right? The 49ers beat them once. The Buccaneers with Tom Brady once, the Eagles once. If we had lost to the Bengals in that AFC Championship game, I wouldn't be able to go within 100 miles of Cincinnati. And they'd be absolutely insufferable. And if they'd gone on to win the Super Bowl, even if they had, there would be this constant like oh, Patrick Mahomes is great, but he can't beat
Right.
Joe Burrow. And there's
And it'd
been
be true.
lots. Well, it would be. I mean, it would be
He'd be
4-0,
0
right?
4. Yeah.
Yeah, 0
Right.
4.
Right.
And you do see this narrative emerge in sports sometimes where you have a great player that nevertheless has one person that he cannot beat.
Sure.
And it's bad enough when sometimes it's like, it's like the Eli Manning thing, right? With Tom Brady, where
Sure.
it's clearly an inferior player.
Right.
And it's just kind of a bizarre little thing. And I mean, that's
a hot take.
Twice, right? well, yeah. But
sure.
the problem is Joe Burrow is close enough. I mean,
Yeah, he's
I don't know if he's close, but
good
he's
player.
either
He's
second
really
or
good.
third. He's good enough that, like, yes, you could absolutely say that you could actually see somebody make the argument that if you could pick either player to be your franchise quarterback, you would pick Joe Burrow because maybe he's not as good as Pat Mahomes, but when they play each other, he has the trump card. And God, that would have been insufferable. So to me, when we talked about it on the show, that game is as much as either Super Bowl win, just from a standpoint of narrative setting, was enormous. So now the house money this year is really short of injury, short of anything that can happen off the field. The success or failure of the Chiefs this year and the success or failure of other teams, there's really nothing happened this year that can thwart the overall, decade-long narrative that they're forming here. As long as they still have the talent to come back next year strong, we're in a good place from that standpoint. So really, all you can do is add to your legacy, add to your resume. And I don't think we have to worry so much about what the Bengals or the Bills or anyone else does.
I don't know if you've thought about this at all, Randy, but Taylor and I were sort of riffing about this earlier today. And not that I like to entertain these conversations, but we like to discuss hypotheticals when you have.
I think I may know where you're going with this, and okay. I have some very hot takes.
Oh, well, regardless. So I was just going to ask, like, if a team from the AFC wins it, well, I guess I can open up to the NFL. Like, if there's going to be a team other than the Chiefs that wins, who are we rooting for?
Oh, that's not where I expect you to go, which is fine. I have another.
I would love to hear after this where you expect us to go.
To me, honestly, actually, for me, it's a fairly easy answer, and it's the Bills.
Yeah, that's what Austin I thought you would say.
If we're in a situation where the Chiefs, if I knew for whatever reason the Chiefs could not win the Super Bowl, whatever, they just missed the playoffs, losing the first round, and I had to pick an AFC team, certainly it's the Bills. I mean, that's why the incredible playoff game with them, the quote unquote greatest NFL game ever played. Mm-hmm. The aftermath of that it's really kind of depressing because these two teams that played a game. I'm gonna borrow one of my all-time favorite sports writer lines about a heavyweight boxing bout between Muhammad Ali and might have been Foreman. Who's the other guy he fought that was
Frazier?
Might have been the Frazier fight, where it was they were the line was that they were fighting for the championship of each other.
Ooh, I love that.
And it really felt like that's the Bills and the Chiefs were fighting for the championship of each other. And and the sad thing is that's kind of what it was, because if you want to, in retrospect, you do wonder if that game took so much out of both teams,
right,
that the Chiefs came out of that game, physically and emotionally so exhausted that they just ran out of steam in the second half against the Bengals. So those two teams played this incredible game, and the beneficiary of it was the Bengals. But the Bills are the team, that's never won there's only, there's still a handful of teams that haven't won the Super Bowl, but certainly it's only them and the Vikings that have been to 4 and haven't won any of them.
Right.
I'm old enough to have, been there and watched that. And
the people eaters.
Well, I'm not old. I'm not that old. No.
I was gonna say that I've seen like clips of them. We've looked back at how dominant those Vikings teams were, but you're talking about Jim Kelly's Bills.
Yes, I remember the Jim Kelly years, and losing to the Cowboys not once but twice. That's also I have some sympathy for them for that.
For sure.
And of course, it all starting with a missed field goal, which not. I don't. I hate characterizations of Scott Norwood as some sort of goat or scapegoat, I should say, because it was a 49-yarder in
Sure.
a time in
Should've
the
been
NFL
shake
where
an extra
49
point.
yarders
Like-
were maybe 50-50, maybe 60-40.
Yeah.
But this was not. The three of us all know what it means when a field goal kicker costs you a playoff game. That was not
Got the
a field goal
heebie-jeebies.
kicker costing you a playoff game, but it could have gone either way. So there's some sympathy there. Josh Allen seems likable. The Bills fans are crazy, but in a good way, right? They're not. They're not. They're
likable crazy, not dumb crazy.
Yeah, they're not calling. They're not going around calling our stadium Burrowhead. They're jumping on tables in like 8-degree weather. So I like Bills fans more. And I mean, this is going to be a backhanded compliment or some sort of a gentle insult, but like you live in Buffalo, New York, like you deserve some good things to go your way.
I feel like you could say the same thing about Cincinnati, Ohio, though. But to me, what puts Bills fans over the top is that they're not Bengals fans. Like I feel like we have that bond too, right? Like after the Bills got bounced by the Bengals, like I don't know if you saw this, Rany, but like they were tweeting, before the game, like we're all just chanting "fuck the Chiefs," right? Like Bills and Bengals fans, like we're tight. Like, fuck the Chiefs. We want to beat the Chiefs. And then after the Bills got embarrassed by the Bengals, they're like, all right, we're Chiefs fans now.
Fuck the Bengals. Yeah. It was.
They got a good dose of that up close. Yes, the Bengals entitlement. I mean, it all, and then there's the whole, the mayor of Cincinnati shoving his foot all the way deep inside his mouth. Although I will say, having buried himself in a hole that he dug himself, I don't think he's dug himself. He's climbed all the way out of the hole, but there's little he could have done to help climb out of that hole more than the video he made announcing was it the Bengals schedule? With the great punchline of Orlando Brown being there in the video. I enjoyed that. There was some humility and a willingness to poke fun at himself after that. I mean, after you've been called a jabroni on like worldwide television,
right.
It's hard to come back from that. There are a lot of politicians that would not not take kindly to being mocked that extremely on a global stage. So I'll give him some credit there. But the Bengals are still much more insufferable than the Bills.
I think for me also, costing the Chiefs a shot at a Super Bowl is something that the Bills haven't done since '93. So that doesn't really stick with me as much as the Bengals one that just did. So,
and I feel like we got our revenge there in the previous playoff game.
Absolutely.
I definitely, I mean, when this whole run started, I have a long memory. I still remember the '93 game.
Sure.
I still remember the concussion for Joe Montana, and there was a near pick six near the goal line the Chiefs had that could have completely changed the complexion of that game. I'm trying to remember who the defensive back was, but and the Bills ended up scoring, but it was almost like a 98-yard pick six. I definitely had some bitter feelings towards the Bills, but that's all been evaporated.
Sure. Confirmed that the championship of each other was Joe Frazier. So that was good pull by you. That was a March 71 fight. So if we now we're going to kind of shift gears from talking about other teams winning the Super Bowl. We're going to go back to what makes this It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. The Chiefs have won 8 games in a row currently. They're on an 8-game winning streak. I always think about the ceiling with this team, with the upcoming season, what's possible, what's out there, because they've achieved more than most of the time what I think the ceiling is. So let's talk a little about a fun side story this season, which is that the current record for consecutive wins is 21 by the 2003-04 Patriots.
This is where I thought you were going before.
I thought that vibe earlier was this. So
let me go on. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, just the Chiefs franchise record's 13. And that was the 19. They've already accomplished that in 19 and 20. If they start 13-0, then that's 21 in a row. And that next game would be in Foxborough to beat the Patriots record. They would go to Foxborough to do it, which is a very fun scheduling quirk here.
I did not realize that. That adds another layer. Because here's where I want to go with this. I'm gonna go one step further with you.
Okay.
Let's play a little thought experiment. Okay,
please.
Let's do it.
So I place before you 2 buttons. We'll use like the Twitter meme of the, I don't know who that is.
The guy, the sweating
the
guy.
animated
the sweating
superhero. Who is it?
Oh, I don't know.
It's
we
like
call him
a
the sweating guy, right?
the sweating buttons meme is.
Yeah.
is, I
Okay,
think.
yeah, sweating buttons is what the name of the meme. Yes. So the sweating buttons meme. And the first button, but this is the modified sweating buttons meme where instead of him sweating, I don't know if you've seen the one where he gives like a hang five because both choices are great.
Cool.
But this is there's two buttons. The left button, you push it, Chiefs win this. They do what they did last year, 14-3 or whatever, and they win the Super Bowl.
Okay.
That's it. Push the button, done.
Okay.
Second button.
It's a pretty good button. Yeah, I like it.
It's a pretty good button. Second button, they go 17-0. They win their first two playoff games. They go to the Super Bowl.
Oh my God.
But you don't know what happens in the Super Bowl. 50.
This is great. This is a great question.
This is the nothing I think more perfectly illustrates the wonderful dreamlike state of being a Chiefs fan.
The first world problems of
September 2023 than the fact that this is a very interesting question. And I'll say I posed this question to my brother.
Yeah.
And he picked the same he made the same pick that I have, which is I'm pushing the second button.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let me game it out real quick. So if the Chiefs are getting that far, if they are 19-0 heading into the Super Bowl,
but
they already have, a 27 game winning streak, and you would imagine this came with other accolades on top of it. Mahomes MVP, looking ridiculous, beating every single team that's come their way.
They are a great team. But
probably
obviously
beating the Bengals again
within the shadow of what happened in 2007 to the Patriots. Right?
Uh-huh.
Sure,
Right.
We've seen this before. And while they'll probably be dominant, I mean, just in terms of dominance, what the 2007 Patriots did prior to that Super Bowl against the Giants was clearly the most dominant, the best any team had ever played. I mean, they had redefined the way
they toyed
offenses,
with people.
Well, and they really redefined offense.
They did.
In terms of implementing things offensively that had never been seen in the
NFL.
NFL.
That was the first majority shotgun team in NFL history.
Right. They just fully shotgun. I think not a full spread offense, but I think they were starting to incorporate some spread concepts and things like that.
Yep.
And to the point where before that game, there was no question, had they won, people that they would immediately anointed as the greatest NFL team of all time. They already had done it. It was just kind of like, you just have to check this box, sir.
Right.
And
you just have to beat Eli
Manning and the Giants.
That's it.
Right. So that's, so keeping that in mind, that because you go back to that and you think about that loss, and you think our loss to the Bengals, it hurts. It hurts from the standpoint that they are an in-conference rival, and so you do have to. You're going to be playing them a lot in the future, and there's kind of that rivalry aspect to it. That wasn't there with the Giants quite so much, although it's funny that they ended up playing in another
again
Super Bowl
and losing again.
Yeah, but that wasn't really.
Sure.
But it was more. But it's still that. But it wasn't so much who you lost to. It was more just that you lost. That makes that game, and what that does to their legacy, how that ruined the Patriots' legacy. That makes that game so painful. And the reason I think, to me, this is. I don't want to say a no-brainer, but a pretty clear-cut decision is on top of the whole Chiefs, being the greatest team of all time, potentially narrative. There's, of course, the Patrick Mahomes greatest of all time narrative, and specifically the Patrick Mahomes Tom Brady comparison. And Tom Brady has said openly that he would trade 2 of his Super Bowl wins for that one.
It's his white whale. Absolutely.
It is his white whale, and it's worth. He's basically saying it's worth 2 Super Bowls.
Yes.
Right. He has said that. So it's thinking long term here. If you think it's going to be very difficult for Patrick Mahomes to get to 7 championships, or to 6, close enough that you can make that case. Well, here's a way to get 2 in one in one fell swoop.
Here's what makes this interesting to me is that Patrick Mahomes is 27. If he were in his late 30s, and you asked me, can he get one more ring here, or does he risk it by trying to go for undefeated? I would lean towards the first button. I want to stack championships late in his career. Early in his career here, I mean, he's got the chance. If he's gonna go 19-0 here, he's gonna go back to probably every Super Bowl for the next decade. Like he's just gonna keep doing ridiculous stuff. So like, I feel confident that if he gets that close, first of all, I feel confident that he's gonna finish the job. And second of all, that even if he doesn't finish the job, first of all, 2008 didn't ruin Tom Brady's legacy. Like it ruined that 2008 Patriots legacy.
Well, and it's funny because prior
2008
to
didn't ruin his legacy, but it did ruin his knee. Bernard Pollard.
07. You're right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
Exactly.
08 Super Bowl, but 07 season.
Right. Well, it's funny though, because remember, going before the 07 season, Tom Brady was like a really, really solid game manager.
Yeah, successful game.
He was a
Sure.
good quarterback. Nobody thought this man would be the GOAT.
Nope.
Nobody thought. I mean, nobody thought he was
He was
the
clearly
GAC.
not as
He
good
wasn't
as
the greatest AFC, active AFC quarterback. Forget the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
Right.
Until he got Randy Moss.
And he got ready. And then, he went out, and then he went out and just. I mean, that's the thing that just blew our mind. Is that this guy? He was a good, smart, game managing quarterback. I'm trying to think of a good comp.
Well, like Alex Smith.
Harry Brett.
Kind of. That's actually not a like the good.
They run the
Andy
offense.
Reid, Alex
Hell,
Smith.
Trent Green. Like a guy that's not going to blow you away athletically, but
I think Alex Smith. I guess I mean from a standpoint of the mobility, they're different types. I do think Alex Smith. Trent Green had the greatest offensive line I've ever seen in front of him. I mean, the Patriots had like one of the greatest defenses. It was a different kind of blessing, but the point, in that range, he was a really good quarterback. And if he could do that for, 10, 15 years, maybe he'd get in the Hall of Fame. But like, I don't think the Hall of Fame was, the Hall of Fame was probably there just because he had won championships. And you win, this is a sport where Terrell Davis is in the Hall of Fame for like 4 years. So,
right.
But it was just, we didn't see that come. So the legacy for him, he was just really starting his legacy.
Yep.
As a from a statistical standpoint, as opposed to just championships.
That was his career high in touchdown passes.
That was his first MVP.
It was his career high in touchdown passes before that 50 touchdown season was 28.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
he got to 30. Yeah,
no, so he definitely went completely nuclear.
Yeah, he was. I mean, and that's the thing. I say that I give him all the credit in the world for. It's like he was a good quarterback on a great team in his 20s, and then somehow after age 30, turn into the greatest quarterback the game had seen for the 30s, and then in his 40s had basically had a Hall of Fame career in his 40s, accomplished more in his 40s than all but a handful of quarterbacks I've ever had. It's a bizarre career path when you look at his career trajectory. It really is just so strange. But all credit to it. But the point is, where Patrick Mahomes is now, if they were to go 19-0 lose in Super Bowl, it would hurt for a long time. But none of us would be like, well, that's it. They're never going back again.
Right.
Sure. And it'd be the first 17-0 regular season. I mean, people still talk about the 2007 Patriots. I mean, it was still an amazing accomplishment.
Well, and this is the thing is that
Manning,
I had forgotten about the fact that they have won 8 in a row. Like if they did that, they would, they would have already broken the Patriots record for consecutive wins.
Sure, they would have won 27 in a row, and the record's 21. They would have shattered.
Right. So there is that too. It's that to me is not quite as important as the undefeated season. Like the undefeated season has a special resonance.
Yes, it does.
But longest winning streak of NFL history. That absolutely that's something you'd like. That's another thing that Patrick could snatch away from Tom Brady, a completely unrelated record. So those are the things that I think about because I'm greedy now. I hate to say it, but just like I have to be honest and self-aware. And it's just we're in the perfect position where we've already won 2 Super Bowls. So that's the thing. Part of this is we haven't just won a Super Bowl. We've won multiple. Yeah. So it would hurt, but I wouldn't be like, oh man, I had the chance to win a title. No, I've done that twice now. So it's like, and I have a reasonable expectation of winning potentially multiple more titles over the next decade.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yes, if that were to happen, now, we're sitting here saying this now, and I mean the odds that they're even like 6-0 is still pretty low. Like I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but
the NFL's hard.
But I feel like this team is, again, if we can get Chris Jones back in there, and this team right now, on paper, seems to be, I think, slightly better than last year's overall.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Young guys are older, didn't lose a ton of talent. I mean, yeah,
right.
sure.
And they were a little, they were proactive in like making, some replacements. I mean, they didn't bring back Juan Thornhill and Frank Clark. They're Orlando Brown. They made some difficult decisions. Like one of the things that Brett Veach is really, really good at is he doesn't get too sentimental. Now that may be a little sentiment with Chris Jones would maybe there are some fruit right now. I think they're taking a little bit too far. I mean, I don't know how much to believe the today's reports of what Chris Jones is asking for compared to what the Chiefs are offering. But if that's true, I think that the Chiefs should loosen up just a little bit. I mean, we don't beat the Bengals. We just talked about how important that victory was. We don't beat the Bengals without Chris Jones.
No.
So I'm okay. I wouldn't say that about even a Tyreek Hill last year. Tyreek Hill was replaceable. I'm just not sure Chris Jones is. I'm staring at the depth chart right now, and it's Derek Nottie and Tershawn Wharton right now. In the middle.
The way that I frame it, Rany, is that Tyreek Hill was Tyreek Hill. There's only one Tyreek Hill in the NFL, but the offense still had Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce. The defense doesn't have any of those things.
No.
Chris Jones is all of those things to the defense essentially. So
I mean, the defense played. We would all say the defense played pretty well, all things considered, in the Super Bowl, and they still gave up 35 points. So this is and also it's just this idea that Patrick Mahomes has yet to play with a team that was like a top 10 defense, right? And just like this is why I think we talk about an undefeated season. And to any people listening who are not Chiefs fans, I apologize. I understand how unbelievably entitled and spoiled and selfish that sounds, but like the argument for are the Chiefs capable of an undefeated season is this notion that Patrick Mahomes has never played with a good defense.
Right.
And it's like, what happens if we secretly replace the Chiefs defense with an above average unit? Let's find out. Like, I want to know. I mean, because it's not just Patrick Mahomes, it's Patrick Mahomes. I still think Travis Kelce probably has 1 to 2 years left at an elite level. That decline could happen at any point. He's 33. I think he turns 34 in October. I spent some time looking at like all the elite tight ends of my lifetime just to look at their aging curves. Tony Gonzalez, Shannon Sharp,
Antonio Gates,
Antonio Gates and Gronk. Gronk, kind of the exception. Gronk 6 months older than Travis Kelce, which will never cease to blow my mind.
Right.
But massive injuries, just a different career path. But the other guys, they were productive until age 37, 38.
Into their late 30s.
They weren't targeted quite as much. And I suspect that's what we're going to see. We may never see Kelce targeted as much as he was last year, but if he's targeted 80% of the time and just as productive on those targets,
works every time,
they'll be fine. But to me, the thing that excites me about this team is just, I really do feel like the offensive line could be as good as the 2019 team.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, left tackle, the Donovan Smith gamble is really, it's a gamble, but I think it might pay off because when they signed Jawan Taylor and said, "Oh, we're moving to a left tackle," I love the idea of signing a guy who was not on anyone's radar as your solution at left tackle.
Right.
But who clearly is an elite talent. But to me, it was almost like taking in baseball, taking a great second baseman and moving him to shortstop. You can do that for certain players. Like it's very similar, and a great defensive second baseman, you could probably make a good defensive shortstop out of it. But if by signing Donovan Smith and then returning Jawan back to right tackle, it's like I'd much rather have the guy at a position where not only I know he can do it, but is a little bit less demanding, and therefore he is that much better relative to his peers.
Elite.
And I really just think Jawan Taylor is, they're paying him to be. I mean, he got the money he did because he is a top 5 right tackle in the league, maybe top 3. And right tackle. I mean, left tackle's gotten all the hype, and obviously the blind side, just elevated them even more. But right, or the tackle position doesn't matter left or right. You are going up against the best pass rushers in the sport.
Right.
And if you can neutralize on one side of the field, I don't care which side it is. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Chiefs they've won without phenomenal left tackles, but like that 2019 team, they don't win without Mitch Schwartz.
Yeah,
Mitch
absolutely.
Schwartz
Mitch with an iconic playoff performance too.
Yeah,
I mean,
it really was. Even in that Super Bowl, like they kept crashing from the left side. I mean, Chip Wasp and Nick Bosa's coming off the Chiefs' left side, and even with like the 7-step drop and whatever 14 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and still Mahomes barely got it off. Nobody was coming from the right.
Right.
So Andy Reid absolutely understands that a right tackle is just as valuable, or 95% as valuable.
Right.
And so I want the elite guy over there.
Well, and teams are very comfortable sending someone on the right especially if the offensive line's got a dominant left tackle. Like they're just not going to run against the wall.
Well, that's why I think it's changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like 10, 15 years ago, it was like, left tackle to the blind side. I do feel like teams on defense are much more willing to move their defensive ends around to take advantage of whatever weakness you've got.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And it's funny, you're bringing up the line as a reason that this team could take a step forward, right? Because they're going to be, looks like, damn good. And
I think Jawan Taylor, look, Andrew Wiley did a great performance last year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's an upgrade. Donovan Smith and Orlando Brown, they're different kinds of players. I think it's about even. I don't, Orlando Brown was inconsistent. There were times he was great, but he definitely, he could stop a bull rush.
His struggles.
But like a guy who's fast around the edge, he really had some issues there. So if they're even the same, and I think there's, if it's true that Donovan Smith was really hampered by an injury last year, was he hyperextended his elbow or something like that early in the year? If that's truly, because he's looked part of this, hype, and you never want to get hyped about the preseason, but like the one thing from the preseason in very limited reps with the first team out there was like, Patrick didn't get touched,
right? Monster,
much to his chagrin.
Exactly, to the point where he's like, they never hit me once. I wanted to get hit. And there's that great quote from like an anonymous front office type last year when the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill, that has always stuck with me, which is somebody, I can't remember, it was a Peter King article or somebody was quoted that saying that the Chiefs are basically betting that as long as Patrick has time to throw, they'll be okay. And then the punchline was, and they're probably right.
Yeah, and they were.
Because in 2020, that's what killed them in the Super Bowl, right? Is that he didn't have time. And really, the lesson that Brett Veach clearly took and said it at the time, and I think he's absolutely right, is that, we can win with any receiving core. We can, you got, especially if you got Travis Kelce, you got one guy to be your safe outlet. If Patrick has time to throw, he will find an open receiver, or he will find a guy who's not open and still thread the needle.
Or run it. Either way.
Or run it. Yeah. But he's got to have time. He cannot have the pocket collapse on him. And that's, going out and immediately spending $16 million a year on a left guard. But you know what? Joe Thuney
he's elite.
He is a fix it and forget it kind of guy. It's just like, okay, that's solved. And then to get Creed and Trey in the same draft is just an incredible piece of work. We talked so much about last year's draft being iconic, but getting 2/5 of an offensive line, a top 2 center, and a top 5 to 10 right guard, that's incredible. This in the 6th round, especially.
Right, a second and a 6th round pick too.
So I'm just trying to think, when's the last time we had this isn't the 2003 Chiefs offensive line, but
it's probably the best since then.
It might be. Yeah. That's what I'm hoping. Donovan Smith is really the question mark. If he is healthy and better than he was last year, this could be the best offensive line we've had in 15 to 20 years. And oh boy, like Patrick Mahomes and a great offensive line. Like that's why everyone's like worried about the receivers. I'm like, I just Amir Smith-Marset, he would have been fine. He would have gotten 500 yards.
Pretty good.
He would have gotten 500 yards easily.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. This is funny. This reminds me, Austin, of the conversation we were having earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday, about some what ifs with this team. And like one of the first ones I said was, what if one of the 3,000 young exciting wide receivers that the Chiefs have actually pops,
Justin Ross,
and takes a step forward and becomes a dude on the offense, right? Like somebody that you could rely on and all that stuff. Like if any of those guys pop, the Chiefs are in great shape. And then what I followed up, and you knew this was coming, was I said, what if our 27-year-old quarterback does what every 27-year-old quarterback in the history of the game has done, which is hasn't played his best football yet? Like, so many of the aging curves of the elites of all time have all had their best seasons in their 30s. Like, they've all gotten better even after their mid to late 20s, even though athletically that's where your peak is. It's still not quite the NFL brain peak. And that seems to be still further down the line for Mahomes. And if Mahomes has another level up in him, like, good luck. What does that even look like?
Yeah. I mean, that's the 10-year view. That's why it's like, I don't even that's why I'm willing to gamble a Super Bowl this year to like build some legacy points, because I just feel like in three years he's going to be, probably better. Now you could argue that he'll be better as a thrower. Certainly, you do lose speed over time,
right?
And so when you look at like fast quarterbacks, this is why the danger of building around a guy whose speed is such an important part of his game as a quarterback. It's speedy, running quarterbacks are, I think, until recently in the NFL, were underrated as in terms of the value they gave you. And I think that this sport has changed. Teams want, a Lamar Jackson type. Who's the guy, Richardson, that the Colts took?
Anthony Richardson.
Anthony Richardson. Yeah.
Anthony. I can't remember his first name. I don't think that guy gets taken nearly that high even 5-10 years ago, because unless you're a Michael Vick, freakish athlete, teams don't, are still worried about that. But the value, I mean, Justin Fields could barely throw last year and still had some value because he can run.
Yeah, sure. They had an average offense.
But the downside of that is those guys, they don't age as well, because you're going to lose your speed faster. I mean, look at Randall Cunningham in his 20s and Randall Cunningham in his 30s. He was a much better thrower. And actually had one, obviously, incredible year with the Vikings in '98, before the playoffs, with Randy Moss. But like, he wasn't running much at that point. But he's just a much better thrower. So, for a running quarterback, you worry that a little bit. But I put Mahomes in a third category. You have the pocket quarterbacks, the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings. You got the running quarterbacks. He's a mobile quarterback.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm trying to think,
Rodgers.
Rodgers, yes, although he probably runs a little more than Rodgers. I have to look. I think the rushing numbers, he rushes more often than Rodgers. I hate to even dare to allow this man to the conversation of a comparison with Patrick Mahomes with John Elway. Would be,
Rany,
I mean,
we have been through the ringer, especially this week on.
Okay. Well, I feel like I've seen some John Elway is overrated discourse appear past week, and I don't exactly know why it got brought up now. I mean, there's never a bad time.
Our dear friend Seth Kaiser has been talking about it.
That's what's going off about it, and I don't know what provoked it. Again, there's never a bad time to remind
Aaron
people.
Schatz. Yep.
So. Seth was carrying the banner on his new podcast, and he's come on and he's very familiar with the Elway
with your legendary thread.
He is. He's discussed it with us before, so he got us into some high level Elway conversations this week. But I get the comparison you're trying to make, and I
think that can extend into your third. Like, I don't think you lose that quite as much, because so much of that is not speed.
No,
as just situational
instincts.
Awareness.
Yeah, it's backyard ball.
Shiftiness, situational awareness. I mean, and let's also, and Mahomes, is, seems to have a tremendous, workout regimen. If Bobby Stroop is to be believed, and now I believe anything Bobby Stroop tells me. He's got Bobby Witt, turning into a superstar. So quietly, maybe the most underrated person in the whole Kansas City sports scene.
Yeah,
Bobby Baseball.
But Patrick Mahomes is, he's made the case, and I think he's right that Patrick Mahomes is faster now than he was as a rookie.
And faster in circles. I'm sure you've read this, but that he runs faster.
He somehow runs faster in a curved line than
a straight line, which
doesn't make sense.
It's hilarious.
It violates the laws of physics.
It does.
But,
so funny.
That's what we're used to with Pat.
But if it's Patrick Mahomes, I guess the laws of physics are more of like a suggestion for him, so that's fine. But my point is, I think he's going to maintain the value of the threat of running, and the scramble, like, as opposed to a design. Like, the designed run play with Patrick Mahomes is pretty rare.
Right.
It's the scramble. And Steve Young I don't know if I mentioned, Steve Young is the other guy I think of.
Sure.
And Steve Young, in his last full years, a 37-year-old, I'm looking at it here, 454 yards rushing and 6 TDs.
Pretty shifty for Steve.
So some of that value, so my point is that, that's just the icing on the cake. But if Mahomes can maintain his scrambling ability, even as he becomes a more and more precise and lethal thrower, I'm so excited. I'm just so excited to watch the next 12 years play out. And, please God, keep him healthy and, let's avoid any true tragedies or disasters here. But I can't even imagine what the fully formed Patrick Mahomes will look like. We think he's fully formed now. Yeah. And if there is another level, it's going to be something to behold.
Something the sport's never seen, probably.
Well, we're already kind of there.
Yeah.
And here's what's crazy. Let's say he plays, until he's 40. Let's say he's an elite quarter. He's like Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers may have lost it last year, but Aaron Rodgers up until age 39.
Yeah,
was and
winning MVPs.
Yep. So let's say Patrick Mahomes plays until through his age 39 season, which means we're talking 12 more seasons. Which means 3 years from now, we're going into the 2026 season. Patrick Mahomes will not have reached the midpoint of his prime, of his productive career. That is
That's
insane.
Good. That's good.
I mean, that Tom Brady season that we were talking about, Tom Brady was 30.
He was 30. We're 3 years away. That 3 years from now, he'll be enjoying. Well, I guess technically he turns during the season. So in 2 years, he'll be as old as Tom Brady was in Tom Brady's first truly transcendent season.
Right. It's all in front of him. We're about to begin a new Patrick Mahomes season. They are special. We need to remember, appreciate that. You have a unique job opportunity of chronicling the journey in real time when you write banger after banger for the Ringer every time he does something cool. Do you have any advice as we close this up for Chiefs fans listening to the show, as far as being able to soak it all in, appreciate the moment, kind of big picture legacy stuff that you just as a fan to enjoy this person and this team?
I mean, that was essentially the subject of my last Patrick Mahomes article for the Ringer late last season. The playoffs were about to begin, which is just sort of, realizing we had already, been to the mountaintop. We had already seen the best and worst moments, of this Hall of Fame career and this sort of newest iteration of the Chiefs. And it was like, having won a title already at that point, I was trying to not focus so much on the destination of whether or not we win, but just sort of appreciate the fact that week in and week out, I get to watch the most talented quarterback in the history of the sport play for my team, improvise. Every game he's going to do. We're recording this on Saturday. The Chiefs have a regular season game in 5 days. And I have confidence that on Thursday, Patrick Mahomes will do something I have never seen in an NFL game before.
Yep.
He will do something. It may not even, it may be the sort of thing we sort of take for granted, but let's put it, or at least he will do something no one other than him has done before. And it might be something that he's never done before. I would, I would pay
that behind the back pass.
I would pay a fair amount of money for him to throw a complete, a behind the back pass sometime this season. I mean, because we saw it and it was good. It was good, and it's not just accurate, but one thing about it is the release time on a behind the back pass
is ridiculous.
It's not just a gimmick. If you could do it right, that is it's like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's skyhook or something. You cannot defend it. How do you defend when he can because an underhand toss is much faster than an overhand throw.
Yep. And as the DB, you're not tracking that. You're not, it just takes you by surprise. It's unbelievable.
To see how smooth it was like, oh, you can do that. And also it's he doesn't have to turn his hips in that direction. It offers you, the ability to throw a ball in a direction no one can anticipate.
It's like a 360-degree throwing possibility. Right. I mean, the guy can go in any direction.
Anybody on the field.
I mean, this is a guy who can hit the goalpost from 30 yards.
Yeah.
You're trying to tell me that, accuracy is a problem. No, he could absolutely do it. So at some point, maybe we'll see that, but, it might just be a little shovel pass, that Jerick McKinnon turns into like a 50-yard touchdown. I mean, we just
Sure.
saw all sorts of bizarre things. You might juke three different defenders and throw a touchdown. Like he will do something. And that I wrote that before we won a second Super Bowl. So certainly now having two championships, like the legacy of this player is secure. The legacy of the franchise is pretty secure. You know, God forbid they don't win any more championships. It'll be a disappointment, but like people will still remember this iteration of the Chiefs decades from now. They'll still remember Patrick Mahomes decades from now. So I'm really not even. I mean, the one thing that to make things fun and interesting and give me stakes is this idea of the undefeated season. Like the minute they lose a game, and it'll probably happen at some point in the first 6 weeks. I mean, you know, it's very hard. If they do, I'm not saying that that I don't want them to win, but like I probably won't be living and dying with every win quite as much.
Yeah, it'll be playoffs at that point. You know, it's just
right. It's just about is everyone healthy? How are they? How do they look? Like if they're playing well and they just got really unlucky and lose a game, you know, it's as long as everyone's healthy and they're in position to, you know, make the playoffs, presumably win the division. There's always the bye. These are, you know, minor, you know, not minor factors, they're factors. But
sure.
As long as they go into the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes healthy, they're a huge threat to win. So I really am not too worried about that. I just want to enjoy each moment, each play. It's, you know, it is the most fun I've ever had watching football. Aside from the 2014, 2015 World, it's probably the most fun I've ever had watching sports.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just appreciate it for what it is because we've waited. You know, I've waited a lifetime for it. Pretty much, you know, you guys I know have pretty much all Chiefs fans have waited their whole life, and most fan bases wait their whole life and never see this. So we're getting to see it. We're enjoy it for the sake of all those people who will never be this fortunate. And you know, don't take it for granted, but at the same time, don't forget to stop and smell the roses along the way. And every time he drops back is a sweet smelling rose, whatever happens.
It is. And speaking of fun, it's always so much fun to talk to you about the Chiefs and about this wonderful, wonderful team. Thanks for joining us. And I assume, hopefully, as long as our schedules make sense, that when the playoffs roll around, we'll have you back on, right?
Absolutely. Well, maybe we'll check in before that. We'll see. Let's see how things go. If they, you know, if we get to 6-0, 7-0, let's.
I love it.
Let's do a check-in and talk some more. Of course, now they're going to go out. They're not going to have Chris Jones, and the Lions are going to like put 40 down on them.
Sure.
On Thursday.
Sure. Well, we will persevere either way. Rany Jazayerli, thank you so much for joining us. It was a blast.
My pleasure.